Hello and welcome to another founder interview. We're going to get to the guns, Kyle. We're going to get to the guns. All right. We've got a founder interview with the Bitcoin bum himself, Kyle Murphy. Amazing. You probably will see him cruising around his bicycle in Austin, or perhaps living out of the most unique, amazing use case I've ever seen for a FedEx truck. I think he's upgrading soon. He built the Pleb Lab. He's the man in the Austin Bitcoin Club and the Austin Bitcoin scene, the Pleb broadcasting system service, and all of those cool things that are happening in Austin. This guy is at the nucleus of it. He's dead center in the middle of it. I'm happy to talk to him today. And a little housekeeping, because I usually forget this. Why do we do these? We do these because we are investing in Bitcoin companies. We have a series of questions from our syndicate, which is a group of amazing people who only want to invest and support Bitcoin companies. You can join that syndicate and learn more by going to ltng.ventures and participate and support awesome people like Kyle and Pleb Lab. You see that? I've always wanted to do that. You know, you listen to like podcasts and they always have some shit that they have to say. And that's why I guess you have to say it. Because that's what
call to action. It's the call to action.
Well, otherwise people are like, what the fuck? Why is this guy talking about? All right, so I'm with
Don't
Kyle.
Forget to smash that like button.
Smash that like button. It helps the algorithm. Okay. We don't care about algorithms today. We just care about Bitcoin and Bitcoin companies and startups and people who are building amazing things, right? So I wrote here in our deal memo, I put Andy Warhol had the artists for the factory. Greenwich Village had the folk singers and beatniks of that era. Motown had Hitsville with R&B and soul in Detroit. CBGB had punk rock and new wave in the East Village. The Comedy Cellar had the comics on McDougal Street, and Pleb Lab is doing this for Bitcoin in Austin. What do you think?
I think that feels like a giant's pedestal to live up to, but I appreciate a good challenge.
Well, it looks like you're already doing a good job. So let's start with this. Kyle, what the heck is Pleb Lab?
Pleb Lab is a grassroots, pleb created, pleb focused. It's a Bitcoin Lightning Accelerator. It is the reimagining of an accelerator program for a Bitcoinized era. We saw a lot of need for a space for developers to get together and build together and learn from one another together. And it wasn't something that I just like showed up in Austin with like a strong vision to build. We started Austin Bitcoin Club. A bunch of people in the community of Bitcoin showed up. And it was that community that told us they wanted to get developers together more often than bit devs. I ran with it. My co-founder of Austin Bitcoin Club ran with it. We decided we were going to try and get developers together. And in the process of getting developers together, we just thought about and brainstormed on what that would look like. And I heard my two co-founders talking over what they thought it would look like. And I basically heard them saying, we're building an accelerator. So we kind of ran with that. Now, in the early days, Pleb Lab was a 10-person office space with 3 guys who thought they could help. And that was about the extent of what we had, but we had a belief that we could help. We had enough space to house a couple of really smart Bitcoin developers and early stage founders. And I guess we'll just call it an intense desire to get things done. And one thing's led to another has led to another. I like people. I like networking. I decided if I could get a bunch of smart people in a room building cool things, I could use my passions and my skill set to try and funnel as much value into that office space as I could. And that has essentially become Pleb Lab.
So you have the Austin Bit Devs. You have the Austin Bitcoin Club. What is that Austin Bitcoin Club? And did this directly spin out of that? Or is that a separate sort of meetup and group?
Austin Bit Devs was what brought me to Austin. It's the Austin Bitcoin Developers Meetup. It's a once monthly meetup, 200 people probably at this point plus, who come to learn about what's going on in Bitcoin. But it was very technical. And when I arrived here, I had very little technical knowledge and a desire to hang out with Bitcoiners more often than I was getting. Even though at BitDevs, I was getting more than most people in the country were getting anywhere else, it still wasn't enough. So we decided to launch Austin Bitcoin Club, which was just our spin-off of a more social event. It was, instead of 2 hours of highly technical, it was 2 hours of eat tacos, drink beer, and kick it with other Bitcoiners. It was the Austin Bitcoin Club community that showed up that spun off into Pleb Lab. Again, it wasn't my kind of thought process when I started Austin Bitcoin Club to also start Pleb Lab. It was just a bunch of Bitcoiners in the community in Austin who said, we want to get developers together. It was an overarching theme that for the first 8 weeks of Austin Bitcoin Club was constant. Everybody I met was like, we want to get developers together. We want to get developers together. We want to get developers together. I just found a way to do that every day.
So we're going to go over the co-founders and we're going to go over the advisors. Okay. So
Sure.
Starting with the co-founders, how do you, first off, who are they? How do you know them? And how did this come together as all of your project?
So my two co-founders are Car Gonzalez and Keon Kusha. It started back in Austin Bitcoin Club days with me and Car. I reached out to Car because after I landed in Austin, I knew I needed to get more involved in Bitcoin. I was looking for a job, didn't really know what that was going to look like, didn't care. I made jokes in the early days that I would scrape gum off the table at Unchained Capital if it got me in the door. In the meantime, I decided I was going to do whatever I could to just get more involved. I started recording some YouTube videos. I saw a guy on Bitcoin Twitter who had a Bitcoin media company, and I reached out to ask him some questions about RSS feeds. We took a call. We realized that we both wanted to get together with Bitcoiners more often. He called me 7 days later to tell me he had quit his job and decided he was going to focus 100% on Bitcoin and Austin Bitcoin Club, and asked me if I was still serious about it. I had never met the guy in person, but I was like, I mean, this guy literally just quit his job to tell me he's going to go focus on this thing we talked about building less than a week ago. I can't say no to somebody with that kind of conviction. So we jumped into starting Austin Bitcoin Club. Along the way, where we launched Austin Bitcoin Club here at Capital Factory, we actually met our third co-founder, Keon. Keon is also the founder of Stacker News and a participant in the first round of Pleb Lab. But me and Car both kind of agreed that if we were going to build something that was highly oriented at a group of very technical people like developers, that we wanted to bring somebody on who brought insight into the mind of a developer. We didn't have that. Neither one of us had any kind of insight into what it was like to be a developer, to work as a developer, to build as a developer. Keon is somebody that we got close to through our collective time together in the early days of Austin Bitcoin Club. And we explained what we were doing, what our thought processes were, and decided to bring him on as our third and technical co-founder.
So we got yours truly right there, Kyle Murphy, the man, the ringleader. We have Car Gonzalez, and we have Keon, who was also the founder of Stacker News, who was in your first cohort. So the Austin Bitcoin Club. When I came out there and went to your Keep Austin Pleb event, where Oshi had the vendors and the food trucks, that was like a really fun weekend. That was my first time at the Capital Factory, where everyone was working out of. So you got a headquarters there at the Capital Factory. How long have you been there? And are you still there?
We are still there. We launched Austin Bitcoin Club here 10 months ago. We moved into the office space that became Pleb Lab about 7 months ago, and we officially incorporated Pleb Lab a little under 4 months ago. We are here likely through the end of next month, although some of next month will be kind of a transitionary period as we will also be moving into our new office space. So we'll be in our new office space and in Capital Factory as a kind of hybrid for some period of time through the end of next month.
So what's really cool about what you did here is you took all your passion and drive and basically found a way to get this space right in the Capital Factory. I mean, God knows how you worked that out. Pre-incorporation, pre-anything. Okay, this is as punk rock and cool as it gets as far as starting a company in this way with literally nothing and just rolling. So you got this space, you got a bunch of people moving to Austin. You got Austin as the freaking hotbed in the country for Bitcoin, or at least one of them, right? I don't want to sell my hometown here in Miami short, but Austin is where it's at. And you come up with this model, but you don't have the model yet, right? Because Pleb Lab is still like Wayne's World for Bitcoin, right? You're doing your thing and you start letting people use the space, right? Do you accept these companies? The first batch, right? I'm gonna ramble them off here. Is Lightning Escrow, it was Oshi, it was Stacker News, it was what's Sam's company called? Hoseki.
So how this actually played out, the initial batch in Pleb Lab, the founding teams that were part of the accelerator, specifically oriented kind of at let's use this as the kind of first trial run accelerator program, was Stacker News, Zaprite, Oshi. Stacker News, Zaprite, Oshi. I'm pretty sure that was the whole team. Now, what we had was we also had Super Testnet, who was like building cool projects. He's a wizard who just likes to tinker and build. We did have Sam from Hoseki, but Sam had already done a pre-seed round and was basically just using the space as a workspace. Same with some of the guys. We got some guys who were working at Voltage. We got some guys who were working at the Bitcoin company, Ben Carmen. We had some guys who were working at Impervious. They just came in already working on projects and like brought in talent and experience and like mindset and mind just like mind capital that helped these early stage startups. Lightning Escrow actually happened about a month and a half to 2 months into the process, where a young kid came in building a front end that matched up really well with the back end Super Testnet had built. And that actually became the first internally created project out of Pleb Lab. That's Lightning Escrow. So Lightning Escrow is technically a part of our first cohort, but was not there at the inception.
So then you're getting from 0 to 1, you get this space secured and you fill it with the most amazing Bitcoiners you can. Okay.
Yes.
Now that doesn't sound like there's a lot of money there. So how did this fund itself up to this point, or was this still a passion project? Like how did that happen?
Yeah. So as we started putting it together, when we realized we were going to get 3 months of office space, when we realized that putting a bunch of smart people, including a handful of early stage startups, sounded like we could have the potential for an accelerator, my thought process was like, okay, we don't have much. I have a 10-person office space and a belief that we can help. That's about it. I don't have capital. I don't have a huge network, but I have a belief I can help, and I've got a space for you. My thought process there was like, okay, if that's what we're going to go for, let's give this away. Let's get people in here as quickly as possible and just start building on top of it. Because my thought process was, if we could actually get a bunch of really smart people and a couple of builders together in a room, I could go do what I like to do and what I'm good at. I could go out and meet people and network and funnel that value in. I could use my military expertise and like help people learn how to be a leader, how to talk to people, how to communicate. And they could use themselves to help each other grow their projects. I would find a way to leverage that success, if it happened, to sell what we were doing to somebody else, like we're doing right now. Now, It was challenging because there really was no precedent anywhere for an accelerator raised this way. Typically, somebody has an exit, they have a lot of money, they go out and they bootstrap all of that infrastructure cost for the accelerator, and they recoup that in the long term by investing in companies that come through with a fund. I couldn't go out and raise a fund because I had no background, no experience, no financial literacy. Like, I didn't have anything that showed there would be any reason to invest in a fund with me. And even if I could raise it, there was nothing that paid short-term cash flow upfront to cover the physical short-term infrastructure costs that were required. Again, in the early days, we had 3 months of office space for free. In the medium term, after those 3 months ran out, we used strong negotiating skills, my personal Bitcoin collateralized for loans, and events that made us a couple of dollars here and there, doing things like the Oshi block party, hack-a-thons, and a handful of other things. So we were scrappy and we just got it done, and we've kept it afloat that way. And now we're at the point where we've had about 7 months to kind of work through a handful of different ideas. I probably worked through like 30 different models before I landed on the one we sit at today, which finally starts to make sense.
Okay, so accelerators are nothing new. If anyone doesn't know, startups usually apply. The most famous one in tech is YC, right? YCombinator. And getting in used to be a very small batch. Now they're very large ones. There's 500 startups and plug and play. And what's up?
It's even more than that now.
No. I mean, other accelerators that exist, right, for tech stuff. But startups will apply. They do 1 or 2 cohorts a year, right? Seasonally in batches. They do demo days. They get investors in. They support those companies with some type of like curriculum through the plan, right? As well as introductions, and then assisting them moving forward. Sometimes the accelerators make an investment. Sometimes the accelerators are granted equity, which we're going to talk about in a minute here on the model of why anyone would ever want to invest in an accelerator. So I think what you're doing is 1,000 times more fun than running a fund. And that's coming from somebody who is running a fund, right? Because you can invest and that's all well and good, but you're at the most, at that germination stage when you can be a cook in the kitchen, or at least support them with everything that they're doing. So let's talk about advisors and who's going to help you, because an accelerator can't be easy and you're going to need some help. So who do you got on board helping you?
Yeah, so we brought on a handful of people. As you know, personally, we went back and forth for a while trying to figure out who made the most sense and who was the right fit. This was also really challenging because things in this space move really quickly. And as we started piecing it together, we saw things kind of playing out across Bitcoin that just kind of constantly kept our thought process in flux with who would be the right people to bring on board to help us grow into what we thought we could become. We tried really hard to get a diverse talent pool from across different sectors of Bitcoin and even outside of Bitcoin, to really bring as much value to the people inside. So like a standard like tech company, if you're just like a software company, maybe a single advisor might be enough. Somebody to kind of give advice to the single founder, 2-person team who's building something. We are going to constantly have this never-ending cycle of people that are coming through Pleb Lab to participate. And I really, again, wanted to focus on trying to provide as much value to them as well as value to me and my co-founders. So we brought on Matt Odell first. It was a really good voice in the Bitcoin space to kind of give us, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like a level of realness, if you will. It put some weight behind us from somebody who's been actively involved in the Bitcoin space for a long time, who kind of solidified that what we were working on at Pleb Lab mattered to somebody in Bitcoin. And that early support really did kick off a lot of momentum in the people that we were talking to in this space. So we brought on Matt Odell. From there, Uh, Honestly, when I brought on Odell, it was the idea was a single advisor would be what we brought on, and that would be the end of it. As it evolved, I became aware that we probably needed to put together a board. That's when we brought on Lisa Nigget, who works for Blockstream and is really kind of one of the most community oriented people over at Blockstream working on the C Lightning side of things. She's also deeply involved in education, which Pleb Lab um, we firmly believe in as well. Like education is, I think, something really important in the space. It's very needed right now. So we brought Lisa on for her connections with Blockstream and C Lightning and her value add as an educator. We also brought on John Cantrell. He is probably the world's leading LDK BDK developer. That ecosystem is still very early and still very new, but a lot of people are starting to learn about it, and a lot of people are starting to kind of play with and explore with building on top of it. So we thought John would be a great value add in the sense that he has probably done more in that ecosystem than anyone anywhere else at the moment. We brought on Graham from Voltage. We've had a really, honestly, probably the most synergistic relationship we've had anywhere in the space at Pleb Lab since the very beginning. Voltage has been an unbelievable supporter of everything we've done at Pleb Lab. We think that our missions align pretty closely with our belief in supporting the developer ecosystem, and they have put their money where their mouth is since the very beginning. They have sponsored every event. They have sponsored every hackathon. We are working on some partnerships for Voltage nodes and credits for everybody who participates in the Pleb Lab program moving forward. So Graham, the CEO of the company over there, was like a natural fit as well. We brought on Ben Price. Ben Price he's still a very early stage founder and kind of still very new in the space as far as Bitcoin is concerned. I mean, he probably hasn't been around a whole lot longer than we have, perhaps a little while longer, but not a whole lot longer. But he's really, really, really charismatic. He's really well liked and respected across the Bitcoin space. He's hard not to like. And in his early days with the Bitcoin company, he brings our guys who are also in an early stage startup a lot of experience with the do's and don'ts and the trials that he's already gone through as a startup founder, which gives our guys a lot of insight into how to save time and avoid the costly mistakes that they made at the Bitcoin company. And our final advisor is our attorney, Zach Shapiro. I was actually introduced to him through a Telegram chat with Brad Mills, who was the first verbal commitment for financing into Pleb Lab, but who wanted to see a couple of things kind of happen with the structure before he was ready to invest. He connected us to a handful of people who were really insightful and really helpful to kind of piece together what it was we had and how to actually make it kind of like a more legitimate functioning business model. And Zach, the attorney he connected me to, was kind of a pivotal person in that role. So we brought him on as an advisor for legal counsel.
Okay, well, that is definitely an all-star list of people in your corner. I don't think you could have done a better job. And yeah, who doesn't like Ben Price, right? All right, so constant flow of companies, right? Not cohorts. That is the model that you're going for. I like it because I don't think it limits it to a certain time. But tell us a little bit about how that constant flow of companies being accepted is going to work and when it's going to start. When will the first one be accepted?
So we are finalizing paperwork for the equity grant agreements that we will push forward as we move into our new space. I have 4 or 5 projects sitting on the sidelines right now that have expressed a lot of interest in participating that I will probably bring in shortly after we finish the paperwork, have a handful of dollars wired into the account so that we can provide them their 15K grants, and we'll sign the paperwork and get the ball rolling. So the when, my guess is we'll have somewhere between 3 and 5 companies that have signed over 5% in common stock for the services provided within the next 6 to 8 weeks. with a handful more that I kind of have on my radar. The reason we decided to do a rolling structure versus a cohort is kind of, there's multiple reasons really. One is what we didn't want to do. We do kind of see a lot of the value in the model of YCombinator and some of these other tech accelerators you mentioned earlier, because they've produced a ton of value. But we also saw room for improvements under a more Bitcoin standard. This is not general tech, this is Bitcoin. And the way we looked at it was, this is not about numbers. We don't want to treat these people like a number. And the idea of having some, this is when we start, this is when we end, you're in, you're out, see you later, good luck with things. It's not really the way we wanted to operate. Pleb Lab is a group of friends who's taking care of its friends. And that's really the way we wanted to structure this accelerator program. That being said, we also understand that it is a business and we can't give away things for free forever. 5% in a company isn't for free, but we also know that at some point, if things are not going to work out, we don't really want to waste time and resources beyond when we need to. So we basically have kind of an understanding where it's like, we're going to exhaust every effort internal at Pleb Lab that we can to provide the resources that we can provide. We're going to help you with your marketing. We're going to help you make good looking pitch decks that provide the right kind of value and the right kind of context. We're going to give you all of the soft skill training. We'll plug you into a network of developers in the office space. You'll have access to the space. You'll have your 15K grant. You'll get plugged into our network of advisors and investors. And if after a period of time, we just find that you aren't the driven person who can make pivots and keep going towards growth, then we will sit down and have a conversation. We'll express to you that this is what we're seeing. These are the failures that we're not kind of able to address. Perhaps there will be a small window of time to course correct. And if the improvements are not seen, then we'll part ways. Our belief really, though, is that as long as we see what we believe to be genuine effort and kind of work ethic towards growth, you're able to make hard pivots when the company requires it, when challenges arise, then we're going to continue to work with you for as long as we need to. The only other time that we will kind of push people out of the accelerator program is once they've actually managed to get through their first fundraising round. So if you've finished a fundraising round, then what we'll do is we'll push you out of the accelerator program and either into a private office or a workspace desk in the more co-working space side of the model that we've built out.
Okay, you said a lot there.
Yeah, I did.
You said a lot. All right, so let's talk about how this works first.
Sure.
All right, so company applies, you accept them. Okay, they're getting, I heard 15K as a stipend.
Yes.
Or okay, so you're going to give them 15K, probably of Bitcoin. And you're going to take in exchange a 5% stake in that company, and then allow them to start the Pleb Lab process. Am I right so far?
You are correct.
Okay, so you got two co-founders from, let's say, I don't know, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Okay, they come down to Austin. This is an in-person deal, right? This is not a remote, like I can be in Timbuktu and apply and I'm going through Pleb Lab. You have to be in Austin.
We need at least one person from the team in Austin. We do not require an entire team move, but we are currently an in-person acceptance only. So if you're not willing to move to Austin, you don't have a spot in Pleb Lab.
Love it. And that's super important and also super cool. Okay, so both the co-founders, they move to Austin. Okay, they start the program. Okay, now once they're in, is there an actual time limit? Right? Is it a 12-week kind of? I know you said you're doing assessments, right? If it's not going to work out, you're going to cut ties and ask them to leave. Okay, but after X many weeks, they get a couple of small checks, right? Maybe they raise 200-300K and they have some momentum and wind in their sails. At that point in time, you're going to say you're out of the Pleb Lab, but you could still work here and you're going to have co-working sort of space. Am I right so far?
You are correct. Yes. We'll have within at kind of the long end of things, you will probably have no more than 3 months in Pleb Lab to establish yourself as the person who can continue towards growth. Like by 3 months, we will know whether you're somebody who can remain in Pleb Lab. If you have not raised by 3 months, but we see that you still have the potential to go and get it done, we'll keep working with you. But by 3 months, we will know whether you're just not the right fit, right? Like you're not in the office, you're not doing the things that we've suggested that need to get done to kind of build momentum. We don't see the work ethic. You're not talking to the right people. It will know by 3 months whether you're actually the type of person, the type of founder who's putting in the work to make your company get where it needs to go or not. If you are, we will keep working with you until you get funding. If you're not, by 3 months, we will cut ties.
Okay. So you get your equity stake. The people from Wisconsin were very successful. And they have since raised a few dollars, but they love the office. They love the energy, the vibe, and they want to continue working out of there. And they're going to pay a small fee. Okay. So they have moved on, which kind of gets to the question. I saw your old office. I know you're getting a new one. There's going to be some crossover or maybe we have 2 offices for a minute, but this new real estate office, how many companies or bodies, I guess, can you have in Pleb Lab, in the active Pleb Lab? And then how much room is there for other bodies to supplement some of that rent and those expenses?
Sure. So the space that we're looking at moving into, I will comfortably be able to house at least 12 to 15 people inside of the accelerator with a design studio, a podcast studio, and a private office inside of that space. Across the hall, we'll have a little lounge. You move into the main space. We'll have 2 call rooms, 2 conference rooms, 4 private offices for rent, which will hold up to 4 people in each office. We'll have a full kitchen, 2 bathrooms, and a main area workspace for just kind of hot desk co-working that will comfortably house up to 40 people. So all in all, the new office space should be able to house probably around 75 people.
That is a big space. And that is really cool that you can grow into that.
I look forward to it.
Okay, so the other sources of income, right? Let's say that you start accepting companies, taking equity, and start filling out these offices. Mm-hmm. Will that office rent or desk space or whatever it's going to be, does that really take a big bite out of your monthly nut for your expenses? I mean, do you see that ultimately paying the bulk of the rent in that space?
I am fairly certain, based on the communications I've made thus far, that within the first 30 days, I will be approaching 50% of the real estate costs covered by people working in the space. And I am genuinely bullish that within a year, we will probably be making more money just from the operations side of things with the co-working, the offices and events than the actual rent itself.
Because that's the thing, right? I mean, you're going to get these small equity stakes in very early stage companies. It's going to take some time, right? You're going to be planting a garden of fields of amazing seeds, of amazing companies, and possibly invest in them in the future, right? We could talk about maybe running a fund in the future and all those other kind of fun ideas too.
Right.
But as far as the short-term capital expenses, okay, so not only do you have those offices that you're filling out, but you have events, you have hackathons, you have other ways. Do you want to just touch briefly on some of the other ways that you can help really control that burn?
Yeah. So obviously the actual physical space and the office rental, we do quarterly hackathons where we actually bring in a bunch of sponsors who provide enough capital for like actual awards for the people who are participating, as well as topping off funds on our balance sheet. We don't yet know really how we intend to kind of monetize the educational side of things. Just like everything else we've done, the way we envisioned like finding a path towards monetization would be to give it away for free until we iterated and changed and evolved enough where the people who showed up for the educational thing basically say, man, that was the best thing I've ever done. I would have paid $5,000 for that. And at which time we'll start charging $5,000 for it. So right now the education thing is still very early, but we do see room for making some money doing an educational thing as well. And then finally, we have PBS, which you touched on very early in the intro to this podcast. We've brought on our first sponsor for that, and we intend to find more as we continue to grow. PBS is a live stream that we do once a week on Friday nights that really is more of an event than it is an actual podcast. We have kind of done PBS and built PBS to be a cultural thing in the city of Austin, where we live stream right at the end of the work week, really before the weekend kind of kicks off. It's like we start recording at 5:30. If you're a Bitcoiner in Austin who is working at a Bitcoin company, you get off work, you walk over to our office. We provide food, we provide beer, we have it set up for an audience. The audience hackles, the audience participates. It's really just kind of this very dynamic live stream that is just a bunch of Bitcoin friends hanging out and getting ready to start the weekend. And we intend to get some sponsorship money from PBS as well that can also offset some of the costs.
Okay, so Unchained, I only went to one BitDevs in Austin, and it was at I think it was their old office. I don't know if they're still there or not, but they have a Commons, Unchained Commons. I don't know. I haven't been there. Is that similar to what you're doing? Is there no overlap? Is that a competitor? What's your relationship with them, and how does that look?
Bitcoin Commons is a side venture owned by Unchained Capital. There's probably room for us to collaborate on the actual workspace, because one of the things I saw with a handful of the guys in Pleb Lab through the last couple of months is that even in something as big and as well structured as Capital Factory, where Pleb Lab began, they were unable to get everything they wanted out of this space. So they actually had memberships at more than one space. They were participating in Pleb Lab, they had access to WeWork, and they were still looking at signing up for Bitcoin Commons. So what I'm trying to do right now is actually negotiate an agreement between Pleb Lab and the Bitcoin Commons to actually create like a Bitcoin co-working pass, where a membership at one will basically get you membership at both, because they both offer kind of different layouts, different structures, different vibes, and a totally different work environment. So I think there's a lot of room for like a cooperative kind of nature between the two of us, where the developer and the developer community is really the person and the people that win.
Kyle has not much competition in the Bitcoin accelerator space that's devoted to Bitcoin and Lightning in the way that he's doing it. He does, though, have the new Draper, the Draper X Studio, which is, I guess, crypto focused. I'm not sure the exact difference there or what they're doing. Do you have anything that you want to touch on as far as some of the differences there? I think one or two of your companies, or at least one, I think, is going through the Draper 2. So, I mean, that's a testament to Kyle right there. Is two of his companies are now going through that program as well, and they're probably going to have some really good intel after they get out of it. But what are some of the difference there between the Draper X and what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I think the two that stand out to me, the one that stood out right from the very beginning is the entire thing is virtual. There is no common space. There is no collaborative efforts. There's no kind of day-to-day building. There is a kind of scheduled routine to get together for these types of meetings. They have their structure. We have ours. Ours is much more oriented, as I pointed out, towards actually physically being in Austin in the space. They don't have that. The second thing that jumped out to me as time went on, it was labeled as a Bitcoin focused accelerator program. They kind of rebranded midway to a crypto focused accelerator. And even before they kind of officially rebranded it, the company choices, at least a handful of the company choices that I saw, obviously I was bullish on Oshi and Lightning Escrow being accepted. The Bitcoin company was actually participating, not one of ours, but another local Austin Bitcoin company was selected as well. So just a testament to the Austin Bitcoin scene in general. But they had a handful of companies that were a little strange for our taste, being built on like stacks, side chains, and things that I think a lot of the Bitcoin community would kind of say is not really a strong Bitcoin focus or an actual Bitcoin ethos.
Yeah. Okay. So you have the Draper X, which is dabbling in some a little bit of shitcoinery. But other than that, you don't really have anyone else, right? There's no other Bitcoin or Lightning focused accelerator, at least from what I've been able to tell. I mean, have you heard of another one?
No. We've thought maybe one was coming. We've like had some ideas that maybe this company or that company might start one. There's a lot of places we see where it would like make sense to us logically that these companies would start one. But we've actually heard nothing concrete. I haven't found or heard of anything that actually sounds like competition in the space. So yeah, I mean, the short answer is no, I have not found anybody that's competing with us at present.
Okay. So since this is a long time horizon with a lot of these companies, and you're going to be stacking equity, all right, you're stacking sats of equity in these awesome Bitcoin companies. That's really what your investors in this round are investing in, right? Is a future dividend of every awesome company that goes through Pleb Lab, right?
That's correct. So what we'll do is we will take 5% common stock. We will hold that on our balance sheet for 1 year. This will avoid any underwriter fees and kind of taxable implications for our investors. And then we will pay out a dividend once per year that will go out to the founders, the advisors, and the investors equal to the percentage they own in the company of that 5% that we have.
Okay. All right.
And it's honestly, it's interesting relative to a fund structure because a one-time investment in Pleb Lab is essentially an indefinite exposure to the lifetime of Pleb Lab, the accelerator. So,
okay, so let's talk about capital efficiency and why you're not going to need to raise future capital. I mean, I certainly believe in your scrappiness. I hate that word, but there isn't another one. And the way that you spend your money and the value that you get out of everything. I would not want to fight you, that's for sure, physically. But why you're set out to raise $2 million. First off, has that changed? I know that you were playing around with that number before. Is it still $2 million?
it is.
Okay, so you're raising $2 million. What are you going to do with that money? And how are you going to spend it?
Yes. So obviously, a small salary for me and my co-founder, one of my co-founders. So we basically have an agreement. Keon, our technical co-founder, is also, as I pointed out, the founder. I think this was the company I missed earlier, the fourth participant in our early stage was Stacker News. But Keon is also the founder of Stacker News. He pays himself a salary through the success of Stacker News. He does not put in the same kind of time commitments to Pleb Lab's success as me and Car do. Me and Car are full-time. Keon is kind of our high-level technical advisor. And in the early days, we made an agreement where he would not take a salary. He was only looking for the long-term value in both the dividend in the equity in Pleb Lab and any carry earned on the fund when we go to raise the fund. So there's no salary for him. So it's a salary for me and my co-founder Car. It is the office space rental over a 2-year agreement that we'll make, plus the 15K grants into all of the companies. Beyond that, I think we'll probably have 10% of anything raised sitting in a Bitcoin balance sheet. We see a lot of expenses on a kind of recurring basis between rent and the 15K grants, where we're going to try and minimize exposure to the volatility of Bitcoin. We kind of genuinely believe most of our investors are already heavily exposed in Bitcoin anyways. So it's not really adding any kind of insane value to our investors with the short-term volatility risks. And then, beyond that, it is kind of being able to actually start paying mostly contracted positions for what has up until now been the insane efforts of a volunteer army of plebs with a ton of talent.
And by volunteer positions, you're talking about what exactly? Like graphics and video?
Yeah. Graphics and video have been the biggest two. We'll also probably bring on an accountant to start paying attention to the books, and perhaps like an executive assistant that maybe to kind of start balancing like calendars and coordinating emails and just keeping us organized so I can stay focused on the things that I do best.
Okay. So I think that covers a lot of the questions. When do you expect to potentially be in this new office space?
My guess is we will be in this new office space kind of no later than the middle of June.
So you mentioned a fund. We don't have to talk about it because that's not really part of this investment. But when you say in the future, raise a fund, what does that mean?
So we're actually still not completely sure we know what that will look like yet. As I've talked with you personally before, Muzz, I am kind of I'm very oriented at doing things one step at a time. I try not to get carried away with too many visions of the future because it kind of takes away from the process of just getting done what needs to get done now. I know there's a ton of synergy with a fund and an accelerator. My thought process is once the accelerator is kind of bootstrapped and we're actually bringing companies through and collecting equity for our services, it makes sense to me to go out and raise a fund and be able to further invest in those companies that we believe in that are going into their financing rounds. That being said, we've also started to explore like a multi-tiered LLC, which kind of operates similar to a fund. It allows us to invest in companies in a manner similar to a fund without some of the overhead expenses of like the filing fees at the end of every year for actually having a fund. But very, very, very early in kind of where we sit with all of that. So yes, we are looking at some type of investment vehicle to further invest in the vehicles or the companies that are coming through our accelerator program, but we're still very early in kind of coordinating what that will look like in detail.
So basically what you're saying is you're going to get together $2 million. You're going to sell, give or take, let's say 20% of the company. You're going to have a pretty decent size office expense every month. You're going to have 2 people for sure on the payroll. That's you and Car. And some of the plebs who've been punished doing things for free are going to now start getting a few dollars. and you're going to truck on making 15K grants, I guess, to some of these companies on a rolling basis. You're going to get them into a co-working space, assuming that they're happy and they want to continue working out of there. You're going to create this magical, awesome, special place in Austin, in the mecca of it all. And you're probably going to make that $2 million last a really long time. And from what I know of you.
Yeah. I've learned to make very little go a very long ways. I've been living a very minimalist lifestyle personally for many years. I think it is entirely possible that $2 million could last indefinitely, but I kind of at like a very minimum kind of bearish case, I think we're looking at 24 to 36 months.
Yeah. All right. Very cool, man. So what else do you want to talk about? How much do you work out a day? How do you get guns like that, man?
Eat meat. I work out for about 90 minutes every day, not including my cardio bike rides to and from home. And then I also supplement with a low dose testosterone. So.
All right, cool. Okay, so is there anything else that we should talk about here?
Man.
I think that's all the questions.
We love all of you who are participating in this round. Thank you.
Okay, so who else, by the way? I was actually pretty excited that we were the first money wired. I know that you like to say Brad Mills was the first one who committed, right? You know, you sell me short on that, but you know, the first funds in. So besides us and our network here, who else are you talking to? What can you tell us? What can you disclose?
Yeah, so most of our interest has been from funds. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, as we pointed out, our goal is to kind of orient this towards a fund, which most funds either can't or just don't invest in. The couple of people that have expressed the most interest that are kind of just waiting to see first money in and or a lead would be the team at CT, the team at Cavalry. I've begun conversations recently with the team over at, oh man, I totally forget. So we've got CT, we've got Cavalry. Folger Ventures has been another one who's been a very verbal kind of expressed partner since the very beginning. They've had like a strong interest in either building or participating in an accelerator for a very long time now. So those are the three that are like the most verbally committed. And then we recently started conversations with the team at NGU Ventures, who are probably likely, they have not verbally committed to taking the lead, but it isn't yet off the table. And I am kind of fully committed to convincing them that they should take the lead for 50% of the round. Regardless, they have expressed that they do definitely want to get into this round. So NGU Ventures, Cavalry Capital, the team at CT, and the team at Folger. And then as well as Brad Mills, just an angel investor.
Cool. Well, that's definitely an all-star list of folks that you're talking to. So I mean, you told them the Muzzman's it, right?
We did, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so real quick on these demo days, right? Which demo days are going to be so much fun, right? If you have demo days and you invite people, and you have Pleb Tank, and maybe you have a panel full of judges, right? And kind of make it into a fun thing, right? That you could have on your PBS, and you could really have fun with a Pleb Tank. And I would love to be a judge. So how would the demo days work then? It's open to everyone and you can kind of like tune in or maybe make investments. I mean, clearly you're going to have a really good relationship with Lightning Ventures, you know, but how does a demo day work?
It's actually a great question. And it's honestly one I don't yet have a solid answer to, Muzz. I would be down to sit down and collaborate on that thought process. It's obviously something a lot of investors have a keen interest in, is the idea of the demo days. I think the challenge that I've run into on my side, which is why I don't yet have a clear definition of what this looks like, is the kind of rolling nature of the way we have this set up versus a cohort kind of creates some challenges for having like I don't want to do an individual rolling demo day, because the idea and the ability to kind of coordinate investors on a constant rolling basis is very challenging. Investors are hard to wrangle together. So you want to try and coordinate as many demo day pitches as you can so that when you manage to get everybody together, it's not kind of a waste of time. But the fact that we have this kind of rolling dynamic nature versus a cohort presents a little bit of challenge in structuring that. So I see the
Yeah.
value in demo days. I just don't have a clear answer on how we're going to structure that at the moment.
No, it's definitely a little bit of a challenge because you might have somebody that was early, but you know what? Then they would just wait and you would just batch them out.
Sure.
That would be a lot of fun. Okay, well, this is Kyle Murphy, the Bitcoin Bum. He's got a ton of awesome interviews online. We have a lot of them linked in our deal memo with Lightning Ventures, as well as he was on stage at the Bitcoin conference this year in Miami. I believe he did not have a shirt on. I have to fact check that. But yes, he is a very passionate, amazing guy. We're super lucky to be investing in him. We're super thankful to be able to offer it to our amazing group of people. And it's been met with killer reception. I mean, just as a side note, I hope you feel really good because this market is crazy. Everything is insane. Things are really tightening up. I mean, everywhere you look. And we've had such a good reception for the Pleb Lab deal, being the sole investors. It's really been great. So congratulations on that. And I hope that we can really roll up our sleeves to help you moving forward. And, you know, I couldn't be more thrilled and psyched about what you're doing. And I want to be as close to that and as helpful to that and supportive to you as I can, because that's where this is going to happen. That's where it's going to come from, right? You put these people together in the room, you know, you put that your community can't be bought, right? Those are your words, not mine.
Yep.
And that's what you've put together here is something that even if somebody tries to rip you off, right, you can't buy it. And that's truly special. So real quick, you have a conference coming up in early June. It's a big deal. A bunch of people are talking about it. What is that? When is that? And where is that?
Yeah, Bitcoin Plus Plus. It is a 4-day conference, June 7th through the 10th, with an all-day taco pleb crawl Saturday the 11th. What that is it's an educational conference for anyone really looking to get more involved in the Bitcoin ecosystem. If you're like me 9 months ago, looking to try and find a way in, it's a great networking opportunity. It's a great educational opportunity, and it'll give you an opportunity to build. So the first 2 days of the conference are like classroom and kind of hands-on educational experiences and workshops, followed by a kind of opportunity to network with a bunch of the companies in the Bitcoin ecosystem that are personally hiring right now as we speak, followed by 2 days of a hackathon where you can take some of the things you learned with some of the people you've just met and kind of explore actually building something on top of the Bitcoin Lightning ecosystem. And we'll have a nice little after party back at Tipsy Alchemist where we finished up the block party. And then, like I said, we'll spend all day Saturday eating tacos. So should be a good time. Really looking forward to it.
Okay, and that's on the front end of consensus leading into that, right?
Yeah, our hope was that with people coming in for consensus, we could try and front run consensus with a Bitcoin education thing and try and get some of the people coming for the kind of shitcoin nonsense to have an opportunity to learn and see what's actually going on in Austin in the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Yeah, consensus looks terrible this year, but your event looks really cool. I haven't booked my ticket yet, but I hope to be there. All right. I guess that's it. That is Pleb Lab. Keep a lookout for Kyle. You'll see him everywhere. Were you in Oslo? Did you go?
I was not.
You're not. I saw your something about your flight getting canceled. I thought you were maybe heading.
No, I I met a beautiful woman back in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I went home to meet the kids this weekend.
All right. And we will not let that beautiful any women distract him from Pleb Lab. And on that note, all right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And this is Kyle and he's the man.
Thanks, Muzz.